whereas our right trusty and right well-beloved cousins and councillors, Edward Earl of Clarendon, George Duke of Albemarle, William Lord Craven, John Lord...
In 1660, after years of civil war in England, Charles II retakes the throne. The new king issues a land charter to the noblemen who had helped him restore the monarchy. The 8 men are known as the Lords Proprietors, and the reward for their loyalty is Carolina. But in order to profit from this gift, the proprietors must settle the land, and they insist that their charter include the area north of the Albemarle Sound, where a colony is already taking hold.
So these people had settled here earlier as Virginians, and all of a sudden now they are under this proprietary rule, and they don't know what that means. So there's a lot of insecurity here at that point. They had been able to live here with no taxes, with no government, and now all of a sudden they may very well have government taxes, the whole thing.
To govern their new colony, the proprietors craft the Fundamental Constitutions of Carolina, a complicated document that combines elements of England's feudal land system with liberal political ideas. The new colonial authority will collect taxes and fees on land grants, but as in Virginia, landholders will have a voice in their government through an elected assembly. And to attract more settlers to the region, the proprietors promise a high degree of religious tolerance.
In other colonies, for example, in New England, they were persecuting anybody that wasn't part of the Puritan church or the established church in that region, to the point of executing people if they didn't agree with their beliefs. So the Carolinas will be one of the freest in terms of religion any place in the American colonies.
No.
As more Europeans begin to trickle into the region, the Quakers are the first to establish a church in Carolina. And in addition to offering protection to religious dissenters, the proprietors also encourage the fair treatment of the native people.
This was an economic enterprise, and it was necessary for the proprietors to maintain peaceful relationships with the Indians in order to carry out the trade, which was the essential aspect of the colony's, economic development. And so in the Fundamental Constitution of Carolina, one finds a respect for Indians as users of the land, but definitely the idea that Indians only had rights to the land that they were immediately using, and all the other land was open for development by the Europeans.
But these grand ideas are not well suited to the rough realities that exist in Carolina, and many settlers resist the new colonial authority.
The European population of North Carolina that's here from one year to the next develops a tremendous set of skills, both in terms of how government operates and how to get things done, and a hugely independent attitude in terms of you don't care much about us and we don't need to care much about you, that it generates a spirit of defiance of authority and suspicion of authority that just doesn't exist in most other colonies.
But the rebellious nature of the colonists is not the only frustration for the Lords Proprietors. The shallow water of the Albemarle Sound forces planters to ship their goods on small boats, then transfer them to larger seagoing vessels in Virginia. This drives up the cost of shipping, reducing colonial profits. Without an adequate port, the economy stagnates. Yet by 1670, Carolina is really 2 colonies, separated by hundreds of miles of wilderness, one settlement in the north around the Albemarle Sound, and a second well to the south on the Cooper and Ashley Rivers.
Charleston has something North Carolina does not, and that's a deep water port that's hugely attractive for commercial activity. And the proprietors began to think in terms of what can we do to strengthen South Carolina's commercial growth and settlement, because that's where the action is.
Growth in South Carolina is rapid, and soon the new port is awash in money. Annual export of deer skins exceeds 50,000, and the emergence of new cash crops like rice and the production of naval stores fuels an increase in the import of African slaves.
The Virginians and the Carolinians needed labor. They needed people to cut down trees and clear the land so that they could expand tobacco plantations. And in the case of South Carolina, eventually, rice plantations.
The Spanish brought the first African slaves to America, and ultimately all the European colonizers picked up the habit. The English adopted it from the practice in the Caribbean. And as Virginia grew more prosperous, the Virginians turned to Africans as a source of labor, replacing the white indentured servants. North Carolinians might have done the same thing. Slavery was legal and slaves were available in this colony, but North Carolina was poor. The North Carolina coastline was so treacherous that it was very dangerous to take products from North Carolina and send them into Atlantic trade. And when you can't export products, you can't make money. If you can't make money, you can't buy slaves. If you can't buy slaves, you can't increase your production of products. And so North Carolina is caught in this cycle where prosperity seems very, very elusive.
As the colonies expand, the English encourage their native trading partners to enslave their neighbors, and Carolina's Indians are drawn into the slave trade.
Indians took members of other tribes as captives and then saw them as objects to be used in the trade with the Europeans. They are captives. They are outside. You can do with them what you wish.
Thousands are taken captive and marched to Charleston. Most are loaded onto ships and exported to other colonies or into the Caribbean, where they will have no hope of escape.